Now, I know that just a few weeks ago, I told you that you don't need that newest shiny thing from whatever sample company just blasted your email inbox, but I'm afraid I have a confession. I have a weakness for presets, and it just so happens that Matt Bowdler, aka The Unfinished, of whom I am an unapologetic superfan, just released his latest Zebra sound set, and, well, like I said, I have a weakness. Regardless, one of my favorite things to do whenever any new synth, sample set, or patch library comes out is to take a listen to the demos because I want to really hear what this thing can do and what I can do with it. Well, as it turns out, these demos are very often written by composers just like you and me who are passionate about writing music, love finding new sounds, and are on their own paths in their career journey. But I have so many questions, like how do you land these demo gigs? How do you figure out what to write? How do you balance incorporating like every sound in the sound set into one track, but still keep it from sounding like you've dropped a bunch of pots and pans down a flight of stairs? I mean, does this even pay? Well, we are super fortunate to have a very accomplished demo writer right here in the community who has written for some of the best. And I am thrilled to welcome Michal Sinay to this week's episode of the 52 Qs podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and explore how you can grow your career as a production music composer. Plus, every week I give feedback on a cue written by a member of the 52 Qs community, and today we're going to be checking out a quirky dramedy cue written by John Chambers, so you definitely want to stick around for that. If this is your first time here, welcome, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the audio podcast on the go. I just want to thank you for spending part of your day with me. And today's episode is made possible by you, the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Qs who help keep the podcast, the channel, and everything going. If you like what I do here, don't thank me, thank them, because we are 100% community supported, so you're not going to hear any sponsored segments for plugins or mattresses. But if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52 Qs and also unlock extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description or stick around because we're going to be chatting more about that a little bit later in today's episode. So like I said in the intro, I have so many questions about how this whole demo thing worked. I don't know if I just thought that the sample makers just either like hired out or sent out, a cattle call, or if these were like these sample makers' personal friends. Are they paid by the company? Just again, so many questions. So when I learned that one of 52 Qs' own members writes demos, I had to ask him onto the podcast. So here is my recent chat with Michal Sinay. It's not every day that we get to welcome a member of the family to the podcast, and I'm so excited to welcome Michal Sinay to the podcast. Michal, how are you doing, my friend?
I am fabulous, Dave. How are you down there in sunny Florida?
Oh, I'm great. Now, you're San Antonio, right?
That is correct. The melting pot.
Oh, like literally, like everything is melting. I don't know. I feel like Texas and Florida have kind of a standoff on which state can go crazier. But
we're just a big gooey bowl of queso, baby.
Yeah, we are. And we're I guess Florida be a big gooey bowl of salsa. So we got you. We got you. But it is so good to welcome you. And I specifically wanted to bring you on because I am completely fascinated by your work as a demo writer. You write demos for some of the largest software and sample companies that you've probably heard of, including my professional crush on Matt Bowdler and The Unfinished. But before we start all that, I love talking whenever I bring somebody onto the podcast to talk about their story into production music, further proving that there are many different paths to this industry. Tell us a little bit about how you got into production music, and then we'll talk about how you got into demo work.
Okay. Well, let's see. It's a long, long, long journey. I grew up in Baltimore on the East Coast, started playing guitar when I was 14, did my first gig when I was 14, not as a player, as a singer. And that ended very quickly when my voice turned from bad to worse. So I got serious about playing the guitar, basement band, garage band, to club band, et cetera, et cetera. And then I moved to LA right at the heyday of the Sunset Strip hair metal 80s. Went out there with my pointy guitar ready to, hit it big, and that didn't happen. It was a little too late. I moved from LA to Austin and really got back into what I was more about, which is more Americana roots type of guitar playing and stuff. And eventually moved again out to the middle of nowhere and eventually wound up here in San Antonio and did some gun for hire guitar playing, country, stuff like that. And I was getting more and more interested in writing for screen. That was my thing. I wanted to learn how to write for scripted stuff, and I knew nothing and I owned nothing, but, a couple computer builds and so forth and so on, gradually becoming the sample library and sound set junkie that I am today. I learned and learned and learned. And, when I got to the point that I kind of felt like I might have know a little bit about what I was doing, I started reaching out to some of these guys. I'd be buying products on these sites all the time, and I would be like, hey, if you ever need somebody to write a demo, let me know. And, pretty much all that fell on deaf ears because the stuff that I had to present at the time kind of sucked. So it's like getting into the production music game. You think you know what you're doing until somebody tells you you don't,
Right.
Which luckily I found you and you've kind of cured me of that part too. Just like Clint was saying too. Yeah, somebody's got to tell you. Yeah. But at any rate, so that long journey, and I have been writing demos now for a bunch of different people for, I guess it's been like 5-6 years. I was trying to do a timeline and remember. I really don't, but it's been more than a minute. But doing that work got me more and more interested and potentially well-trained, to get into production music, because there's a certain amount of similarity there as far as reading briefs, brevity of the piece making its statement, its point quickly, using the references that you're given, lots of things that, the two kind of go hand in hand. And all of that led to that moment of kismet that we've discussed before, where you did your interview with Matt Bowdler, aka The Unfinished. Mm-hmm. And that's how I found you, because I was already had been doing demos for Matt for years. And I'm like, oh, well, who's this Dave Croft guy? It's like, he seems kind of legit. So that's when I vetted you, and that's how I became a member of 52 Qs, which is one of the best things that I've ever spent money on.
Oh man, you honor me. Thank you so much. Yeah, and your production music career is starting to take off. You've gotten placements on CBS Sports, and I remember when that happened. I remember you getting that placement the same way I remember getting my first placement. And this is how I know that this is what I need to be doing, and this is what I'm called to do. Because it wasn't my victory, it was your victory. But seeing someone who you've worked with and you've mentored and you've kind of poured into find the success that you've had was so rewarding for me. So I just want to say congratulations,
Thank you.
And you're on the upward slope of that, and it's only going to get more and more. We just released 4 albums, from the 52 Qs family with our briefing room program, and 4 albums, and you are very well represented on several of those albums.
Thank you so much.
And you have figured out how to kind of turn on the faucet and turn it on. And one of the things I love about your work which is knowing that you're a guitarist, you don't actually do a ton with guitar. Not that I've seen.
I've given you 0 guitar cues so far. 0.
You
That's very intentional.
You excel at the synth programming, and you're like a walking encyclopedia on any plugin that I've ever heard of, and many I've never heard of. So I always know that if I have a question about a release or about a synth, does this do this? I always know that I can ask you. Is that a direct result of your work as a demo writer?
100%. A lot of the synths that I write for most of the time are kind of like, the heavy hitters. It's all the UV stuff, Zebra, Diva, Repro, Hive, Omnisphere, obviously, which is my desert island piece of software.
I'm with you. Yep.
I've been asked this before, and I said, man, if I had my laptop in one thing, it would be Omnisphere.
That's right.
I believe you can write an entire score with it if you have a very large and voluminous collection of amazing presets from guys that,
I mean, we did that. We did that on one of the live streams. You remember the Omnisphere Roulette, where I literally dialed up some of Matt's presets and hit random, and whatever came up, I wrote a cue, and that cue got published. I think it's made air.
Yeah. And, along with those guys, I mean, Arturia stuff, Pigments, Uno LX, which is, maybe lesser known kind of, they do a Jupiter and a Juno, knockoff. Very, very good. Plenty more that I'm probably forgetting about at the moment. But any rate, so yeah, that's kind of slowly acquiring those synths over time. I mean, I didn't go out and just buy everything all at once,
right,
just like anybody else. I mean, I got Omnisphere. That was a big investment,
a chunk of change, right?
Yeah. Then of course I got Trillion, and then I had Stylus RMX, then I got Keyscape, and and so forth and so on. And I've collected up the all the UE stuff over time and everything. And but you can learn a lot by looking at the patches and reverse engineering, like I know you did with Omnisphere. What's going on here?
Yeah, looking at Matt's patches was like a master class in how a professional really uses that beyond just the stock sound. And the stock sounds are plentiful that come with Omnisphere, but unpacking and looking behind the scenes or under the hood or whatever of Matt's patches taught me like, oh, this is what Omnisphere does. And Matt's aren't overly complicated either. It's like you move the mod wheel, it controls these effects and everything. I want to back up because you said that you submitted a bunch of emails that fell on deaf ears, and I guess you didn't hear back. What was it that allowed you? I mean, what was the breaking of the dam that allowed you to kind of start doing this more?
Well, I did some unsolicited demos, like I would get a new release from somebody, and sit down and start messing with it, and I was like, I'm going to write a track and just use this, and then I posted some to socials, whatnot, SoundCloud, etc., and be like, hey, I wrote this track, and a couple times somebody went, hey, that's really good, and I'm going to share that if that's okay with you. I'm like, that was the point. Yes.
It's all working to plan.
Right. And Matt was one of the first people that actually really gave me a shot. He had some, there's a big community of people that do this, and we don't really know each other, so to speak. Everybody's all over the world, just like everything else.
But you're on the same playlists.
Right. And some of us are friends on socials and stuff, but there's not like a big amount of interaction. But as people, I guess, get busier and busier and sort of graduate out to other things, then a spot opens up and they're like, hey, I'm looking for some demo writers, and here's what I can give you access to, which is, predominantly free goods.
Right. And so we're not listeners or viewers. If you're watching this, we're not necessarily saying, hey, go spam every independent patch maker with that's not what we're saying to do.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, they're probably not going to respond well to that.
Well, just like production music or anything else, man, if you just unsolicited and spam people, that's never a good idea, but write some music, post it on your own socials, tag that person. If they like it, then maybe they'll share it. I wrote a couple tracks with Heaviosity stuff, they liked it, they shared it, got a lot of spins. They keep all their demo work in house in New York, and they're never giving me a crack, but that's okay.
That's all right. Yeah. I mean, even if it's just like sharing it, sharing it out. So don't look at this as a way to get free stuff, right? You were writing the demos anyway. You bought the plugins, you bought the patches, and
I was paying these guys good money. I was buying their products. I was a customer long before I did any writing, Yeah. And that was because I really liked their stuff,
Yeah.
Another way in, I did some work with 8Dio years ago, and it was a pretty brief stint on their team. They had a contest. They had a scoring contest where they said, hey, score to this picture, and I didn't win, but I finished high enough that they offered me a shot to write demos.
That's cool.
So that, made me really happy. I was like, okay, cool. This is a big invite from a really big company, and I did a few different pieces for them. I think I mentioned this to you before. I was in a little over my head with some of the stuff that they were throwing at me. So, it was a learning experience. That's right. For sure. It's like anything else in this game, man. Just when you think you know what you're doing, you find out that you don't know jack, So,
right. And just to be clear, I mean, there's not like a ton of money, if any, to really be made in doing demo. You have to really kind of love it, right?
Well, I'm not so sure that some of the guys that have like really been at the very top of the ladder working for like maybe the biggest companies aren't getting financially rewarded. I've made some money from some things here and there, but it's chump change. Mostly it's free goods and exposure.
Yep.
We can never have enough exposure bucks, right?
And of course the demos have to be good, right? So it's not just mash a bunch of the sounds together, and it's got to sound like a complete piece of music.
And therein lies the challenge, So basically anybody that's out there that buys product, libraries or sound sets, that there's always going to be some demos and a walkthrough video and those type of things that give you a good idea of what you're fixing to spend your hard-earned money on, Well, writing a demo is part of the process of selling a product, Now, I mean, I would listen, I still do listen to demos of stuff all the time. And how I sort of got interested in doing it was listening to tons of demos for stuff that I was considering purchasing. Then I was like looking at the names and going, oh, well, this he's on here and he's on there and he's on there. There must be something to it. It's kind of like when I was a kid, opening up a gatefold LP and reading all the credits,
That's right.
Who produced it, where was it mixed at, who mastered it. I knew all that stuff.
Why do you think I have a Wuhan, China back there? Because I read in the liner notes for Rush, Exit Stage Left, that Neil Peart plays Wuhan, China's. Yep.
Yeah, I was always into what studio, what producer, all engineer, all that stuff, So I started realizing, oh man, these guys must be doing okay doing this, And I didn't know if it paid any money or not, but I didn't really care. I just wanted to get my foot in the door.
Right.
And one led to the next, one led to the next, one led to the next, because just like everything else in this business, once you are a known commodity, who and then, you have a reference.
Well, it's, good old fashioned networking. Like once you're in, then, like you didn't hear of me because I blasted ads on Facebook. You heard from me because I connected with Matt.
Right.
Right. And so, and I connected with Matt because a friend of mine turned me on to his plugins through a Facebook contest that Matt was having. And he's like, the contest was recommend a composer friend who probably hasn't heard of me, who you think needs to hear of me. Right. And then my buddy Steve Wheeler said, Dave does. And he gave me, I won. And Matt gave me a sound set of my choice. So I got like Colossus 1. And then I said, I must own all of these. And I vacuumed up everything off of his website. Because at the end of the day, we just did an episode about, you don't need to buy all this stuff and you don't, those lies you tell yourselves. But just today, as we're recording this, his latest sound set, Apotheosis, which I know you did demos for, Apotheosis was released, and I bought it within minutes of getting the email, because I'm not a fan of Matt's sounds. I'm a fan of Matt. Like, I want to support what he does, because at the end of the day, man, he's just like us, right? He's a composer. He's a working stiff in a room in a house, right? Not in a $80,000 studio with floating floors and all that. He's just a dude in a room with a computer. And so I'm a fan of Matt more at this point, more than I am of his stuff.
He's an incredibly talented dude in a room with a computer.
Yep.
I don't know how he continues to wrangle such amazing sounds out of these pieces of software. It blows my mind.
So go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying, like this last one that you just mentioned that was actually released today, the day that we're recording this, 7/7, hundreds of sounds into 2 volumes. So I sit down and go, I actually sent you information from the brief.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How does this work? Is it like, here's a brief, or is it here's a ton of sounds, or just we want these specific things? Run down how the whole process works using Apotheosis as an example.
Okay, so once you're in the game, so to speak, and you have a relationship with somebody, they'll send out a bit of a blanket email to the guys that they typically work with and say, I've got a release coming up, such and such date. This is what it's for, what product, what synth, whatever. This is what it sounds like, and here are some references, and an actual brief, just like you would get for production music. You can get into more details on the one that I sent you, and then standard requirements, no more than 3 minutes, send it either MP3, WAV file, normal stuff. But it's the references and the vibe that is the part that you really have to hone in on. Like Matt, for example, is pretty specific. He's going to give you this is what I'm shooting for. This was what influenced, the design of these patches, which, as a happy aside, he has turned me on to so much cool music that I didn't know about, I've definitely learned some stuff from him, and I'm a soundtrack junkie. I listen to soundtracks way more than I should,
You're a composer for media. I mean,
I just dig it. And, people think that's weird. If my iPod goes on random, people just start freaking out going, oh, what's going on? But, and then there's always the deadline. When is it due by? And are you available to take on the project? 99% of the time my answer is yes, unless for some reason I'm just overwhelmed, But it's way more time consuming than you might think, because let's use that as an example. So here's 400 patches. Well, okay. So if you're going to do it justice, well, obviously you got to go through all of them, and, click, 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 click. And for me, my process, I go, oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. And I start like going, or in that beautiful moment, you hit the key and go, cue starter, and you're like, okay, my mind, my imagination,
instant inspiration,
my imagination just went off, and I hear where this is going, provided that it fits within the brief. So 400 patches is going to take you a minute to go through and start picking out some of your favorites, coming up with rough sketch and idea. And I work in templates. I have templates that are a crap load of zebras, a crap load of divas, a crap load of omnispheres, and I just start loading up patches and trying to get a groove, trying to just get something to flow.
It boggles my mind, because you're not just selling patches. You're not just saying, here's a cool thing I did, but it's got to sound like a complete piece of music. that makes some kind of sense. Now, obviously, when you're watching it or listening to a demo, you expect it's not going to be exactly like you might necessarily see like in production music form or whatever. But how do you balance that? How do you balance like showcasing as many things as possible without it sounding like you're just rattling the junk drawer in your kitchen?
Yeah, so that is the challenge. I think you're going to use or play one of the tracks that
Yeah, we're about to listen to Dirty Bomb Squad, I think.
Okay, so that's the one for the unfinished set that just came out,
Yep.
Apotheosis. I try to title my tracks to at least give the potential listener an idea of what was going on in my mind and the imaginary scene that I'm writing to.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that's really cool about the demo thing versus production music, the restraints of production music aren't involved in writing a demo. I can pretty much, as long as I stay within the brief, obviously, but,
you're not having to make an editor happy. You don't need stop downs and end on tonic and all of those things that I drill into everybody.
Right. I can throw all those out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after you've whooped my ass for a few weeks, then I can just go, okay, now I'm going to write a demo and he can't tell me to stop.
That's right. That's right. That's right. You're not the boss of me.
Right. Exactly. You're not the boss of me now. And, like this one brief that you're fixing to discuss, it was pretty wide open, and, this is a really cool set because this is a lot of patches that were leftovers, so to speak, from bespoke projects. And we know that, Mr. Bowler writes for the biggest names in the business, or designs, I should say.
Yeah, he programs
and so, man, you're getting access to play with, leftover crayons that he's, done some really cool stuff with.
That's such a good way to put it, man.
It's
crayons
so exciting.
that he, like the color he invented himself. Like, here is the crayon that I use to paint this picture, and this is this little nub of a crayon, but there it is.
And this is
what a good way to put it.
It's my analogy, man. When I was a kid, I always had to have that 256 count Crayola
with the sharpener on the front. There.
And the ironic part is that I'm mostly colorblind.
Oh.
Yeah.
Look at all these gray crayons.
Yeah. Isn't this beautiful? Not so much. But yeah, so that's how I look at sound the same way,
wow.
That it's that box of crayons, and I love the day that, the demos are released, because there could be 10, 12, 14, 15 guys that have all written tracks. Everybody got the same box of crayons. Yeah. Nobody paints the same picture. Nobody colors the same picture.
Am I okay to read this brief?
Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty much descriptive language that wound up in there. So I think it's not telling any details.
Some of it was the description that was on the release itself. He says, this is from Matt talking about his release Apotheosis. Although these sounds were originally programmed with specific film, TV, and game score briefs in mind, in developing, tweaking, and curating them, they became equally inspired through a prism of some scores I was listening to at the time. Namely, Lauren Baugh's Luther, The Fallen Sun, Tyler Bates' John Wick 4, Henry Jackman, The Gray Man, Brian Tyler, Fast X, Harry Gregson Williams' Infinite, Hybrid Takedown, Stephen Barton, Watchdog, Bloodline, and Michael McCann's Superfuse. He said, and this is from the brief itself. I am, of course, looking for demo tracks. In the style of the above would be good. Action, drama, emotion, all with cinematic feel. Car chases, rooftop fistfights, love affairs, superpowers, cops, revenge, spies, heist, epic vistas, neon lights, the sort of things. Anything from subtle underscore to rousing trailer stuff is welcome. Now that's not a brief. That is like, here is 10 acres of field. Now go graze. How do you keep track of 600? There were 600 patches in this specific. How do you, where do you even start? Or do you just divide and conquer, or what?
Well, so there's a couple things about this one that is a little bit unique. Normally you don't get that much real estate. It's a little more focused. This was the kid in the candy store brief, man. And also, normally, if it's a volume 1 and a volume 2, or in this case, like Zebra 2, HZ, etc., stick to one volume, right. Stick to either regular Zebra or HZ. Don't mix and match. But this one was a little different, and it was like, have at it.
Let's take a listen to Dirty Bomb Squad, and then so we're going to take a listen to this is Dirty Bomb Squad by Michal Sinay, which features, is this only sounds from?
Yeah, it's what you call the old naked demo, no additional stuff.
Gotcha. So let's take a listen to it. That was Dirty Bomb Squad by Michal Sinay. Michael, thank you so much for sharing that. And I got to tell you, my production music brain was going haywire. I'm like, nope, well, we can't, breaking rules. But what it sounded like underscore. Like it sounded like a film soundtrack. And so because, it's doing all those like non-layering things, non-phrasal things, but it sounds really sophisticated. So well done, man. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you always say, dude, read the brief. What does it say? Action, fight scenes, rooftop chaos. That's what that track is. It's a very high BPM, and it's an action scene.
Well, does we joked earlier about exposure bucks. Has that translated to you as far as like people finding you on SoundCloud or whatever? How has that been, other than writing for other demos?
Well, I haven't had the Marilyn Monroe moment yet. No one's swept me off my feet, but ideally, I mean, I love what I'm doing now with production music and all that, but the dream has always been to get into something scripted. I've scored a couple really bad indie films, and I mean, really bad, but I would like to, someday at least stumble into a ghostwriter gig or something, because, I have a very vivid imagination, and that's what I enjoy about writing, some of these demos is I get to make up the story. And I would like to think that when you listen back to the music, that it's giving you a vibe and taking you somewhere and telling you a story in, 1.5 to 2.5 minutes. And, if I'm getting my point across, but getting the point across also too is listen that what if you were to add all the other instruments? Like Matt used to use a phrase, just add orchestra, So here's the bed of the track. What if you were adding in brass or strings or, whooshes and bangs and all that stuff, and the demo, I think, should represent like a good building block, like, and that's why you'll hear like fully dressed versions too, that have all that stuff. Well, obviously you need to go back and strip all that out because you don't want to, deceive the customer that they're getting
Right.
something that they're not. But as far as it being lucrative, no. But I'm an eternal optimist. I've been in this game, and as far as the music business goes, for well over 4 decades.
Right.
I've had my highs, lows, and in betweens, and I keep my expectations measured and realistic. And I just hope there's more wins than losses, but it makes me happy. It makes me happy, and that's what matters.
Man, that is so important. And I think we've talked about this before, but if you're a composer, the act of composing should in and of itself be its own reward. And so you need to enjoy composing more than you enjoy having composed.
Nobody's twisting my arm. I can say
right.
no at any given time. And
yeah, well, I mean, if Dirty Bomb Squad's any indication, I think you sound ready. You sound ready to do that film score, which leads me to my next question. What has been some of the challenges of coming away from out of the demo scene into production music? Because I'm sure there are folks out there right now who have maybe done like film scoring competitions and they want to get into film music, but they see production music as, and I don't mean this pejoratively, it's just kind of lower hanging fruit, right? There's, 46% of film and TV uses production music in some way, which, and so there's an hour's worth of music on an episode of like Toddlers and Tiaras or something, which might represent 80 different composers, but there's only one composer for, Fast and the Furious. So what have been some of the challenges of transitioning into production music out of like the demo space and the underscore type space?
Well, learning from you is what taught me what I thought I knew about production music and all the things I didn't know. And that's the challenge was like, no, dude, that intro is way too long. We need to, don't bore us, get to the chorus. Come on, let's go. I would like to be trying to do these artistic things where, we're going to come in here and then we're going to build to this. And then you're like, no, none of that matters. Where are the stop downs? Where's the edit points? I need this hard button. I need it on tonic, no slow fades. No, all, and as a songwriter, which is my real background, this starts breaking like all the rules to me. Like, this is so repetitive. I would never do that in a song, it's like, but that's not the point, so you have to change your mindset.
Yeah.
And, you have to be willing to learn. No matter what kind of music you're producing and who it's for, there is always somebody who's better than you that can teach you stuff, and you should never stop learning, whether you've been doing it 4 weeks or 40 years.
Decades. Right.
So, learning to work within what works for an editor, is way different than writing, demos or songs or anything of that nature.
Yeah, and you're gonna get feedback. I'm assuming Matt or any of these other demo any of these other patch companies, they'll give you notes. They'll say, hey, this isn't working for me, or they might just reject it outright.
Matt has returned one. I took several stabs at it. I just didn't get the vibe, and he wasn't afraid to say, yeah, this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
And when I send off a track to any of these companies, any of these guys, I consider them all friends at this point.
Sure.
It's with the same amount of trepidation as when I send a cue to a library. Are they going to like it? Is it going to get used? I'm an idiot. I check my inbox and go, oh, please tell me that it's accepted. I'm a musician. We're frail little artists that, are always seeking some sort of affirmation from somebody. So
I want to listen to one more of your cues here. And by the way, thank you so much for sending these along. I want to listen to Memory Leak. We're going to take a listen to it. It's an omnisphere. It's not a zebra, or as Matt would say, zebra.
It's got a good story behind it too.
All right, so we're going to take a listen to Memory Leak, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. All right, that was Memory Leak. Michael, tell us about the story. That was fascinating. It's like a totally different vibe. That had like sound design elements, and it was a lot more kind of eerie and a lot less kind of form and pulsing and structure than we heard with Dirty Bomb Squad. But tell us the story behind Memory Leak.
Once again, a massive collection of patches. This one's for Omnisphere. It was designed by Stefan Baer, who's Sonic Underworld, and curated by Lufstrom. Those guys work together in conjunction. Lufstrom, I think, pretty much distributes his stuff for him these days. Mm-hmm. Both two incredibly fantastic dudes. I mean, and both sound designers of, the highest level. And I think I sent you part of the brief there. I'm not sure if I did, but
yeah, yep. Do you want me to read it?
Oh yeah, just hit the highlight there. I mean,
so this was a brief for an Omnisphere set called Gemina,
right,
which became the Gemina soundtrack project, and you're going to talk about that here in a minute. Omnisphere Gemina is a production library for TV, video game, and film composers. 400 patches reaching across genres and giving you all the tools for your next project. Tons of arpeggios and modulated BPM sequences, lots of cinematic basses, synths, keyboards, pads, guitars, and hybrid instruments, cool transitions, sweeps, hits, and soundscapes. As always, I'm looking for a cinematic type demos only this time around. Please use only the sounds from the set. Additional orchestra samples and voices are okay as long as they are not dominant. And I should say we're not sponsored by this. Like Lufstrom hasn't given us any kickbacks or anything. I haven't gotten anything for free. I told you just this morning, I dropped $70 on Apotheosis because I want to support Matt. So I just wanted to say that we're not trying to sell you any of these things. All right. So tell us about it.
Yeah. So once again, here's 400 patches, it's going to take a minute to start going through there. Same process, just start going. Yeah. Cue starter. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's this. And sticking with the vibe of the brief and try to write a piece that, sometimes the demo can only be maybe 14 tracks. And sometimes I've gotten them up into the 30s but sounds that they just come in for just a split second and they're gone, and try to build something cohesive. Like you said, it can't just sound like a jumbled up bunch of, pressing buttons. You have to write something that makes sense, and at least to you. And then, hopefully it helps these guys demonstrate their product and, make sales. I mean, we are, we're selling something,
That's right.
You're not, I'm not, they are, and this project turned out to be super, super cool because it was, I don't know, many weeks, maybe months after the sound set actually came out, they decided that the demos they got from all of the writers were really good. And they decided to put together basically a soundtrack album, which is called Gemina. And I think you've got the link where you can get this on Bandcamp. But the reason why I bring this up is that it's the first time anyone's done anything like this that I've been involved in. And they did such a remarkable job sequencing the tracks. And if you listen to the whole thing play all the way through, there's no way you would not know that you were not listening to a film score. And it goes to the quality of the writers that are on there. You'll see a lot of these same guys' names from one developer to the next to the next. I mean, these guys they're just so good. And, like I said, everybody gets the same box of crayons. Nobody draws the same picture. Nobody cut. It's amazing. Yeah,
it reminds me of the shows that Love, Sex, and Robots. Is that what it is? Or Death, Sex, and Robots or something like that, where it's all animation, but each episode is a series of vignettes, like short stories, essentially. But all together, it creates a whole that all continuously makes sense. And so that's kind of what that reminds me of. You have different artists, different creators, all contributing their individual style and voice to a greader whole. I think it's fascinating.
And that's what I think is so incredible about this project. If any of the listeners are really interested in, thinking about writing demos and stuff like that, this album is a textbook of the level of quality you should be aiming for.
Right.
These guys are badasses.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. They could, many of them are in film and TV and other things as well. I think they're just sound junkies like me.
Yep.
But, and it is amazing how, 15 or 16 people's imaginations all took them somewhere different. Yet when the whole thing was compiled together, it sounds like it was written for a film. It tells a story, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And I'm incredibly proud to have been asked to contribute a track.
Yeah. And of course, we will have a link to that in the show notes and in the description. So be sure to check on that. And we're also going to have a link to Michal's website, mjsinaycompositionformedia.com. And where are you on the socials and the Instagram and all of that stuff?
Yeah, all that stuff is under Aloft Productions, SATX. I kind of started the composition thing after I started getting some traction with production music, because my Aloft production thing is so crowded with demo stuff and all that.
Sure,
I wanted to kind of,
separate yourself.
Yeah,
kind of create a different brand, if you will.
I wanted to segment it a little bit more so that I could keep my email straight.
Right. There you go, dude. Do I understand that?
Yeah, you've only got 7 email addresses.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, Michal, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for letting me just ask a bazillion questions. I'm still flabbergasted and impressed that you can write these demos, and just coming from a guy who gets overwhelmed from like just patch fatigue, the fact that you have turned that kind of the junkie like feed more into a way to not only have fun doing it, but also create relationships with these people that we all admire. So I just congratulations on that, on all your success.
Yeah, and as a closing note from my end of things, boys and girls, this is just like any other part of this business. Making friends, establishing relationships, honoring deadlines, just being a good all-around dude or dudette. These things matter, because if you're a jerk, then no one's asking you back.
Yeah, that's right. No matter how talented you are, because the level of talent to overcome being a jerk is much higher. I mean, you have to be stratosphere of talent in order to overcome being difficult to work with. Well, Mike, thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for your continued support. And I am honored to be even just a small part of your journey. And go check out Michal's stuff. Go hit up that Bandcamp. Help support these composers. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was an absolute pleasure.
Once again, a huge word of thanks to Michal Sinay for joining me on today's podcast. And like I said, we're going to have his links in the description below. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from Mrs. 52Qs, who's going to tell you how you can join the community and also support everything that we do here. But when we return, we're going to be checking out a quirky dramedy cue featuring live saxophone from John Chambers.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52Qs podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52Qs isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52Qs community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52qs.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52qs.com.
That was Foolish Curiosity by John Chambers. Thank you so much for sending this along. This was sent along during our week 28 weekly feedback thread. And he said this is a comic curious thing with live alto sax. Thank you so much for sending this along. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And the live sax is such a nice touch. And you mentioned, and I want to give a shout out to to your sax player. This is Sophie Kriener. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Did an absolutely fantastic job. Really the only thing that I have to say is a little bit some of the reverbs, I think, and none of these are deal breakers at all. I want to say that on the front end, and also during, when I'm giving feedback like this, it's partly kind of here's how I would change it, or if there's some things that I would tweak, maybe some things that need addressing, and very rarely are these types of things absolute show-stopping deal breakers. They're just some tweaks that might help you along. So I don't think, like what I'm about to say, I don't think a library is going to listen to this and say, nope, rejected because of this. So I just want to say that on the front end. I realize that I launch into giving feedback without giving it context. So I wanted to give a little bit of context there. And regarding the reverbs, I'd want to make sure that everything really sounds like it's in the same space. And namely, the percussion feels really far back. Like way, way far back. And the strings feel a little wet as well. It's again, a very, very minor thing. And I think in my mind, I can kind of picture like this is like a concerto. So the sax is on the front of the stage. So it's concerto setting. But in general, the percussion and the pits feel really wet, and I feel like they're getting a little bit lost. And I wonder if we dry those out a little bit, it's going to sound like it just kind of comes together. But the sax performance is fantastic. You can hear how long that audio tail is after that last spot. Really, really, really wet. So yeah. Love the harpsichord coming in. I felt like that was a nice touch. Nice stop right there. Nice little interlude. And then we bring this kind of electric guitar thing. And by this point in the cue, I found myself asking, where's the sax? Like, I really, really missed the sax. It's a nice touch. And can we shuffle around this percussion part just a little bit? Like, I like making it a little bit busier. We can actually see the shaker parts here in the waveform, but can we do something like, and keep this? So instead of ch-ch-ch-ch-cha, can we do like a ch-ch-ch-cha? Just so it's ch-ch-ch-cha. And I would make these stops a little bit cleaner. These dramedy cues really work well when you have space, and give editors space to put in punchlines and, to edit in funny things that are happening. So there's a little delay. Clean. love the saxophones. Oh, you did so well. She's doing a fantastic work. I don't even know if you need this section. So what would happen if we skipped over? I'm gonna try to edit this and see what it would sound like skipping over this guitar part. I just want to see. This might be absolutely terrible. Let's find out. I don't hate that. And it brings the cue closer to 2 minutes. And so just undoing all that so you can kind of hear what we have. I think this is going to be a kill your darlings type of a thing. I like it. I even like the guitar sound we're using. I just don't know if we need it. So let me try this a little bit. See if I can make this edit a little bit smoother. Yeah, I would get on with the sax. That's the main attraction here, and we've spent plenty of time. You know, we've given a melody to the piano here. We then give the melody to the harpsichord, and so now it's a complete interlude without the saxophone. Let's get back to the main attraction here, because I don't think we need to give a melody to a fourth new sound. Also, watch out. There's some stereo things happening where the left and the right side are a little out of balance at times. And I would clean up this little edit spot right here. So if the editor wanted to use this, boom, nice clean ending, and then boom, tag, that little coda on the end, because this is perfect. But if you give them a nice clean ending without the delays and without the percussion carrying over, especially since we've done that, but give them a lot of editing options there. As far as the mix goes, everything is really working for me. Foolish Curiosity, I think, is a fine title, if not a little plain sounding. With dramedy cues, you have the freedom to really do crazy titles and get away with puns a lot more. And so I would use something with the sax, or I don't know, like, I don't know. I mean, the obvious puns and sax and what other words that sax sounds like. That's what I would kind of lean into, because putting that live sax on there, I think, is really, really good. And that would be my suggestion for a title. Again, Foolish Curiosity, that title is absolutely serviceable. But I think another title could probably make it pop more, so that it makes the editor or the music supervisor want to click on it. When they see that, they're like, oh, sax on a beach? Yeah, I'll totally listen to that or whatever. Once again, thank you, John, for sending this along. This was sent on during our week 28 weekly feedback thread. And we put weekly feedback threads together every single week where we take cues from the community. People leave their cues for consideration on the podcast, as well as just getting feedback and leaving feedback. And if that's something that you're interested in, then why don't you join us over at 52 Cues? We'd absolutely love to have you. And if you found that feedback helpful and you would like feedback on your own cues, then you can head over to 52cues.com/coaching and order up your own feedback video, and where I will look at the title, look at the mix, form, structure, harmony, melody, all of those things. And while you're there, you can also book a one-on-one coaching session with time slots available for practically every time zone. You know, I've talked about my miracle morning before, and so I am up in the morning anyway, and so I have lesson slots starting at 6 a.m. Eastern. So whether you're West Coast, East Coast, North America, Australia, I'm sure that we can find the time, and I would love to work with you in any way in helping your career as a production music composer. So that is going to do it for me this week. Once again, a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep everything going. Please know that I love and appreciate all of you. And there will be no podcast next week. If you're listening to this in real time, I am going on vacation. And this is something that I talked about at the end of last year, and realizing that, you know what, man, I need to set aside at least 1 week every few months to just get away. And so Shannon and I, Mrs. 52 Cues, we are heading up to North Carolina, and we're actually vacationing in the family beach cottage that Shannon's family owns, and we're spending our vacation where we spent our honeymoon. So we're really looking forward to that, kind of like a little home away from home. And even though we could go other places, we're always drawn back to the beaches of North Carolina. But that's going to do it for us. So no new episode next week, but when we return, I am going to be joined by Mike Myers of Songwriting for Guitar. He is going to be joining me on the podcast. We're going to be talking about being a songwriter, being a guitarist, and focusing on production music. So that is coming within a couple of weeks. But that's going to do it for me. Once again, thank you so much. And I hope that you've had a fantastic week 28. And I'm looking forward to hearing what the universe has in store for you, because I know that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2023 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52cues.com.